Hi everyone, welcome to the Leadership Adventure channel. I'm Marv McCarthy, your host, and thanks for joining me today. Leadership Adventure is about offering insight and inspiration to help empower leaders. So if that's you, come hang out with us on a regular basis. And if you've joined us for the first time, welcome. On Tuesdays, we release the blog, which is designed for all leaders, and on Thursdays, we release the Devo, which is for faith-based leaders. Now today is Thursday, February 8th, which means it's time for this week's Devo. And today's episode is called Holy Ambition. Now, if you happen to be with us for the blog segment on Tuesday, we talked about the general subject of ambition. And I gave you 12 different steps, 6 healthy expressions of ambition and 6 red flags or cautions that can warn you, kind of an early warning system in case your ambition is going in the wrong direction. So in business, ambition is rarely questioned, right? That's what Tuesday was all about. But sometimes as Christian leaders, we wonder how it translates over into the church or ministry world. So that brings up the question for today: is there such a thing as holy ambition? And if so, what might that look like? So I'm glad you asked, because the answer is yes. In fact, Scripture is rich with examples of men and women who ambitiously pursued God's assignment for them. And not only were they ambitious, but that ambition bore fruit. And that ambition had world-changing impact as they leaned into God's call. So in a broad sense, holy ambition is a deep spiritual or moral sense of conviction that transcends personal gain or success. And in the business world, ambition is often about personal gain or success. But in our world, as Christian leaders, it's not. It's motivated by God's higher purpose or God's calling. Now, in a specific sense, it represents the inner drive that God has planted inside of you to accomplish God's specific assignment for you. Now, as we unpack this today, the life of Nehemiah in the Old Testament is a great example of holy ambition in action. So let's take a look at Nehemiah's life. So Nehemiah's day job, as it were, was to serve as a cupbearer to King Artaxerxes I of Persia. So this was a really, really important job. It was essential, and it was a position of high trust. Nehemiah was essentially the last line of defense in protecting the king from an assassination attempt through poisoning. So that's an important job. But God's real purpose, and God's more important job for him, went much further than serving as Artaxerxes' cupbearer. You see, Nehemiah's assignment from God was to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Now, to illustrate this, pastor, speaker, and author Chip Ingram has published a book called Holy Ambition: Turning God-Shaped Dreams into Reality. And Chip uses Nehemiah's life, and he covers this whole subject in detail. So I'd like to relate the 6 different stops along sort of a roadmap that Chip creates in the book that are sort of signposts or guideposts or guardrails to help you determine what God may be asking you to do. So let's take a look at that process. Step number 1 is to develop a dislocated heart. What breaks your heart? I mean, to the point that you want to jump in and do something about it, not just a general feeling of sadness. For Nehemiah, this was the plight of the remnant of his people in Jerusalem. And Scripture relates to us that it brought him to tears on more than one occasion. So his heart was broken over the condition that his people were experiencing. So that's the first step, really. That dislocated heart helps us identify the burdens that God has laid on our heart, and that's a clue. That's our first stop on the map. Step number 2 is experience a broken spirit. Now, by broken spirit, I don't mean that you go curl up in a ball in the corner and hide from everything. What it really means is that we have a stark realization that our time, talent, treasure, and strength emanate from God, and that we cannot accomplish our mission without God's power. So the internalization of that deep realization is the second step in the process. Step number 3 is to practice a radical faith. Now, for some of us, I think it gets a little dicey right here, and it's true for me too. And the question that Chip puts forth is that can you practice a faith that allows you to step out in the midst of uncertainty in order to obey God? And then this little question on the end of it, no matter what. So if you can say that, honestly say that, you've made it to the third stop. Now, step 4 is creating a strategic plan. Faith without works is dead, just as James tells us. And Nehemiah created a detailed plan before he set forth to embark on this project. And you know what? His plan was thoughtful and good enough that I'd actually use it as an example in a base as the basis rather for a class on program management. And only once the plan was ready did he then set out to accomplishment. So this fourth stop is actually about leaving the station rather than sipping coffee in the lounge. 1 through 3 we can think about, we can pray about, we can become convicted that we're ready to practice our radical faith, but now it's time to put feet to the conviction. Step 5 is to make a personal commitment. And this is about resilience. We talked about resilience on Tuesday as well. Your why here has to be strong enough to pull you through to the very end. So this stop is all about maintaining the momentum to achieve the goal. And then step number 6 is to have a courageous soul. Leaders understand this. We are out in front and we lead our troops into battle, and any battle comes with a few scars. Courage helps us stand firm, speak the truth, and continue in the face of the inevitable adversity or personal risk that will pop up. So those are the stops on the map. And my question to you today is, where will your map lead you? And you know what? I'm kind of excited to find out. Thanks for being with me today. Have a great week. See you next time.